Anytime you put an aerosol into the atmosphere, it's going to affect wind speeds. It's going to affect cloud nucleation. An interesting thing is geoengineers are talking about how, if these programs were to be initiated, which they have been, how they will have to utilize and implement weather control and determine where it rains, when it rains, and who specifically gets rain.
We're already beginning to see the formation of the center of circulation.
My name is Scott Stevens. I studied meteorology at the University of Kansas, and that was my first TV job. Was on the air was in Topeka, and then I worked in Omaha and Tulsa, Albany, New York, and then out into eastern Idaho in the Pocatello, Idaho Falls market for the last 10 years of my 20-year career doing weather. It wasn't until about 2005 when I got deep into the weather modification aspect of this story of geoengineering. One of the parts of the program that is very important, that plays into the chemtrails, is the precision of these actions in the atmosphere. These chemtrails are absolutely required, so they introduce the right energy at the right location for the right length of time. These trails are wires in the sky.
The combined technologies like HAARP and the chemtrails were designed to work together as weather weapons.
HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. It is filled with phased array antennas. They steer microwaves into the ionosphere where they will activate all of the ions up there.
They can use excitation waves that actually affect the metallic particles. So we've ionized the air column. They can heat it, they can cool it. HAARP has directional antennas, and they can focus their antennas on where they want to move the jet stream, and they can hit the jet stream, and they create an artificial high.
If you accentuate the high, if you amplify a little bit, it's like building a mound of dirt, and you have a little creek or a little stream of water coming. You build the mound of dirt, that water's not going to go through it. So you build the mound, and then that's going to impact storms that are inbound. And so it's very easy to add those particulates of aluminum, barium, and whatever else they want to put in there. And as you add heat to that, those particulates then radiate the heat into the atmosphere, and it warms. And what does a warming atmosphere do? Boom, it expands. We see more intense droughts. We see rainfall rates of 1 to 2.25 inches an hour, and sometimes even rainfall, 1.25 inches a minute is just unheard of. And so when you get the atmosphere capable of conducting this kind of electricity, plus the engineers, you're going to end up with weather that is extreme, and that's putting it kindly.
When they move the jet stream, it then pushes up into the polar vortex. The polar vortex really can only move when there's something impacting it, like HAARP.
They can heat up that ionosphere. So when the jet stream comes in, it hits that bubble and it diverts. The jet stream flow that is normal brings precipitation and brings the jet stream right into California. And then it brings storm systems with it. It brings rain.
The jet stream got pushed off of the coast of California. It dried us up and took all our moisture away and pushed the jet stream north, and when it hit the polar vortex, it then was ricocheted straight down the east coast.
What we've been getting, very warm, very dry conditions in California, but in terms of the Arctic and in the Midwest, it's swinging all of that moisture, all that cold air.
You can kill a storm in place. That's easy to do with HAARP. You'll see the texture and the structure of the storm just melt, and it will become just this diffuse, amorphous, featureless mess. And that was one of the big epiphanies I had in forecasting. Anticipating a winter storm coming through, you've got to set forecast out that night, and you're waiting for the snow to start. You're waiting for the snow to start, and you're waiting for the snow to start, and it just doesn't. And you go outside and you see a warming zone begin to show up on the satellite loops. The clouds literally just begin to warm. And then that collapses the potential of the storm to put down the moisture. It's done. It's shot.
When aerosols, heavy metals, whatever type of aerosol it is, when they're introduced into the atmosphere, the water molecules will attach on to these aerosols or metal particulate. So instead of falling naturally, they drift. So we get droughts in certain areas, floods in other areas, exactly what we're seeing right now.
There has been precious little water in southern and eastern Africa where El Nino is scorching the earth.
In a country like Yemen, we're talking about 100 cubic meters per year.
The rainfall has been delayed to an extent that people haven't been able to plant the crops that they need to survive.
If you want to destabilize a nation, you can create a drought, and within a couple of months, you're going to have riots, you're going to have destabilization without even firing a weapon.
It's an invisible weapon. It is a weapon you can blame on anything. It is something more powerful even than the nuclear war.
You can blame this technology on God. You can blame it on nature. Get away with a whole bunch.
Think if we had the ability to steer hurricanes, and the hurricane was going to slam into New Orleans, and let's say you could steer it so it would hit Mississippi instead. And let's say you're going to, instead of killing 1,800 people in New Orleans, you would kill 100 people in Mississippi. And if you do that knowingly, are you murdering those 100 people? And there's all kinds of equity issues there.
The moving of the hurricane off of the coast of Florida was done by the Signal Corps, and the U.S. Air Force was flying over it. They thought it was heading out into the Atlantic, and so they dumped dry ice into it. It turned into the coast very quickly. It made a detour and pretty much wiped out Savannah, Georgia.
It will be through an active act directly harming people who otherwise wouldn't have been harmed. In this model simulation, there is a reduction in precipitation in this model and in other models in the monsoon region around India. This is obviously a cause for concern because many people live there and depend on that for agriculture.
It could change precipitation patterns, change weather patterns in undesirable ways, and there would be winners and losers.
Farmers came here and levied in the Sacramento River, and ever since then, agriculture has existed in the area. Because of the abundance and variety that are grown here, it's also an area that produces many fruits and vegetables that are easily harvested and easily distributed throughout this area.
The state of California is resorting to drastic measures tonight to combat its severe drought.
We're in an historic drought, and that demands unprecedented action. It's for that reason that I'm issuing an executive order mandating substantial water reduction across our state.
The drought has been going on for 4 years. We are entering our 5th year. In that time period, we have seen a shift of water rights from the hands of private people, private farmers, into the hands of very large corporate agricultural groups that are buying up water rights silently.
A lot of farmers are not getting the water supply. Right now, Jerry Brown, the California governor, he's called for a state of emergency in California. And what that does, it gives him the legal right to take any land, and it also gives them the excuse to come in with corporations and corporatize the water.
The state is using this drought as a means to take land that doesn't belong to them through eminent domain. They're using this drought as a means to prioritize conveyance to corporate agriculture over the private farmer. This is part of making corporate ag and corporations have more of a priority and more of an importance than the people. The people of the state of California use between 12 and 15% of the water in the state compared to corporate agriculture, which uses about 85%. The water rate increases that the people have been experiencing are out of proportion compared to what corporate ag pays per acre foot for water. All of the burden of this drought is all being placed upon the people of the state of California.
Many of the farmers in this valley are not growing because they get allotments from the federal government. It's our water, but the feds own everything.
To grow food. What happens then? Land dries, that land is then sold for pennies on the dollar, and then huge
The small farmer, if he does not have water, he's in a lot of trouble.
The people of the state of California will suffer through restrictions on locally grown fruits and vegetables, higher water rates, and above all, a loss of the public right to water. And that right is being eroded every single time a drought emergency is called. Water is definitely the next oil. Water is definitely going to be the battleground for the next 20 to 50 years. And if we don't get our priorities straight, it will be the consumer, the private person, the public who will be the one suffering.
If in fact this drought is being caused by man and is not